financially challenged children to volunteer. Yeah. Once again, a very warm welcome to both of you. Thank you so much for joining us. So, yeah, to just get started, my first question would be to both of you, right? So, why do you do what you do? What inspires you to do? To both of you to have founded this organization to focus on social change. Am I audible?
Yes. Hello, Sujit. Or you can probably
Hey,
start first. Yeah,
Karthi, I'm good. I would love to. I just shifting the device. Karthi, would you want to go in first?
no problem. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. Okay. So for me, actually, the inspiration for starting Team Everest came during my school days. So I come from a place called Arani, which is in Tirunelveli district, 150 kilometers from Chennai. So till my 10th, I used to study in a small village near to Arani, where a lot of children used to come from financially poor background. So the school is in mid of a agricultural land actually. So I had so many friends who come from very financially poor background. In fact, one of my very close friend who is my benchmate and lunchmate. So he used to struggle a lot to buy even a long size notebook. So whenever my maths teacher asked to buy a notebook, it takes him like 10 days or 15 days to buy a long size notebook. So what he does is because his father is a cycle mechanic, he goes back home, works along with his father, he earns some money, and then come back to school and come back to school and study. So it will take him like 15 days to buy a single long sized notebook. Till the time my teacher used to punish him, it makes him kneel down or stand outside. Almost till my 10th standard, I used to meet a lot of students like him. And 11th and 12th, so I scored good marks in 10th. So my mom thought, okay, maybe let's put him in a good school in Chennai. So I joined a school in Chennai, a private school, which is, the fees is much higher than what my family could afford. So they actually bought some depth and they actually put me here. The kind of people whom I met here is totally different. They come from financially sound background, and at the same
Right.
time the quality of education was totally different. So that's when, like, as a 11th standard kid, this was disturbing me so much, because if you have money you get one kind of education, and if you don't have money you get other kind of education. So I thought I should do something about it. And that's when, I completed my 12th. So till 12th I didn't have much opportunity to do. But once I joined college, I did my metallurgical engineering in Salem. So all those 4 years I used to volunteer locally in orphanages, visually challenged homes. So that's how a lot of my volunteering work started. And during my final year I was campus recruited in Cognizant. So, and I still remember August 21 2006 is when I joined Cognizant, Torepakam office in OMR Chennai. So when I joined over there, and the final year I was campus recruiter. So at that time itself, I decided, no, like we should do something big. So I designed the Everest logo and all during that period. So there was no team. But 2006, once I joined Cognizant, the very first month, myself and three of my friends, we collected around 4,000 rupees from our first month salary. We went to a village where almost 70% of the children were child laborers. So they used to wake up like morning 3 o'clock, go to a nearby garden, pluck flowers, then tie it up, go to a nearby town, so which is RNA, which is my native. So they come over there, sit in the bus stand, sell the flowers on the street, and then again catch the bus, go back home. If you have food, have food. If not, just take bath, come to the school by 9:30. So when you see a child in that school at 9:30 a.m. in the assembly, that's a child who actually woke up at 3 o'clock, finished a job, and actually came back to the school. So we went there and we gave them uniform, notebooks, school fee. Those days there was school fees. Like for 10th standard, the fee is like 49 rupees per month. Sorry, per year, not per month. So we had even children who couldn't afford that 49 rupees actually there. So we identified those defaulters, we paid them fee. So that's the very first activity of Team Everest 13 years back. So this August almost will be completing 14 years now. So that's where the journey started. And I started seeing the power of volunteering. I could see, like how individuals could make a huge difference. And so I worked in Cognizant for 8 years till 2014 December 31st, post which I quit my job and into full-time volunteering right now. So in one word, if I want to answer why I'm volunteering, is because I could see volunteer has a huge potential to change this world, and it's yet to be tapped. So I thought, like this is the right time that world needs volunteering than ever.
Thank you so much for sharing that. It's really inspiring to know where your journey started. Even right from school, that you had this thought, you've seen the ground reality, and where the story is stemming from. So thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah. Mr. Sujit, if you could.
Okay, good. Am I audible? Let me just quickly do a
Yeah,
sound check.
you're audible. Yeah.
So thanks, Kathy, for that. That's awe inspiring to see somebody, to see that the passion to start something was as early as school days. Directly opposite is my case. So that way you have two different panelists, right from school, right from college, to work till 2013. Starting an NGO was not in my laundry list of things. I mean, the top bucket things, like any other average citizen of this country, you wanted to get educated in a good college, have all the luxuries in life, get placed in the top MNC, and then you want to grow in your corporate ladder. That's how I was. Of course, the only grounding point for me was I was very active with the Interact and Rotary Club. So that way I was exposed to a lot of community work right from my ninth standard onwards. But that was more of like a hobby. I kind of got I didn't really know that I was actually involving myself in community service. Even there, community service was all about hanging around with my friends. So it could be a pulse polio immunization program. You have to go and immunize kids with this polio vaccine. More than understanding that it's a life-changing moment for the child. For me, it was hanging around with my close buddies. 20, 30 of us will. I mean, they'll say you can bunk class and go and do this work. OD attendance was given. So I used to have great fun. Okay, and little did I understand the impact of how this is going to span out on a later point in time. And from school, it went to college. College, I was very active with the Rotary Club. In fact, I led the district, this Chennai district in 2000, 2001 as a district representative. And that way, a lot of community work was involved. My logical progression should have been I should have become a Rotarian, which I didn't. And because that's the time I was focusing on my career at Infosys. I worked for Infosys for the last 19 odd years in the HR function. So, like any other corporate person, so you always want to get promoted every year. You want to see a salary hike and so on and so forth. And there was no exception till 2013. That's how it was going on. But if you ask me what's my inspiration, I've shared it in many platforms. So for the sake of repetition, let me quickly run you through. I always believe that some of the biggest life-changing moments happen around you. And sometimes if you believe in God, or if you believe in something above, or the supreme power, he directs you to that particular the incident, makes you think, right? People who pay awareness, people who spend time thinking about the incident, for them it can be life changing. For some of us, it could just be another incident and we just walk off. We say it's his karma, he's meant to live like this, etc., etc. Now, if you look at it that way, a good number of NGOs were actually have actually started with some of these life changing moments. So, two things which interested me apart from HR was I was into public speaking, actively into public speaking. That gave me a huge high. So, almost every Saturday and Sunday, I used to be in some stage in some school or college speaking to kids. And around March, April, May, I devote a good amount of my time to speak to children about career counseling. Because even today in Tamil Nadu, there are only two options that we give our children. Either you choose engineering or medicine. So that's the time when I go and break some of this myth. And in Madurai, I met a student. The girl I didn't even look like a student. She was like malnourished, very thinly built. She was wearing a very dirty salwar kameez that somebody has donated to her. And she was the one who came and asked me after listening to my talks, saying, "Look, you spoke a lot of stuff. Some of this I understood, part of which I didn't understand. But can you tell me a course that I have to finish this course? Once I finish this course, I need to go and work. I should get an employment." And she was pretty direct about what she wanted. So when I inquired about her, I realized that this girl was in her 12th standard. Her mother is no more. Father is an alcoholic, and she had two siblings. And like Karthi said, there are girl children who get up at 3 o'clock every day, and getting up at 3 o'clock, 3 to 6, she does all her household chores. She studies in that time, and then goes and works as a domestic help in 4 houses before she going to school. And her routine is morning 2 houses she would work, and evening 2 houses she will work. She has to cook for her siblings. She earns, and that's how she runs the family. Father has zero contribution to the entire household. And when I asked her, okay, but the 12th results were not out then. So when I asked her how much will she score, she said, Anna, the lowest I have scored is 1,154 out of 1,200, all the revision exams. So I expect something more than that. Now that was like a tight slap on my face. because looking back into my 12th scores, I need to multiply my 12th marks by 2 to get there. And here is a kid working as a domestic help, scoring 1154. And I really wanted to help her. Now, see, this is what even when we talk to volunteers, right? The moment of enlightenment always comes around with some of these small incidents which happens around you. And something struck me. With scoring 1154, I would have brought the roof down. I would have asked my father to buy the most costliest bike or whatever. And here is a girl who's coming and asking innocently to suggest a coach. She's not even asking for help. And I decided I have to somehow help her. And if I look at my salary at that particular point in time, I could 100% afford to educate one child. But sometimes ideas come and ask you this question. There is something called as the inner voice, which each one of us get that. Sometimes these inner voice is positive, sometimes it's negative. The inner voice inside my head asked a very simple question: what about other children? There'll be many, many children like this. And then, please understand, when somebody comes and asks for help, the first thing that we do is always open the wallet and give money. Okay. Now, to me, I didn't do that. I just picked up the phone and I was to drive down from Madurai to Salem, and I called a particular college chairman, because a lot of these college chairmen were friends of mine, because I used to go and talk to their students whenever I was free. So I asked this college chairman, would you mind giving me one free seat? Instead of me paying the fees, I asked one free seat. And he in turn gave me 20 free seats. He said, I want to do this, but I don't have the bandwidth to do it. Why don't you do it? So what I asked was for one seat, and he gave me 20 seats. And that is where something thought was striking in my head, saying, look, this is not going to be small. This is going to get much, much bigger. If one person can give 20 seats, what about other colleges? So with this one kid in mind is where we started a Matram way back in 2013. Very, very small baby steps. First year we admitted only 12 students. Today we are about 937 students strong. And what is a little unique about this foundation is we are not into the fee business, right? Because let's say this Corona time is a pretty tough time for even a regular donor. Okay. And the first thing that you will want to cut is any additional expense that you want to cut, you will go and cut down. So rather, we went to college and said, you give us free seats. We will identify meritorious students and we will kind of place them. So in a nutshell, if you ask me what is my inspiring moment or my moment of enlightenment, it is on April 27th of 2013 in Madurai, in a hall, when this young girl walked up to me and asked me for this help. Otherwise, I don't think I would have started something like this, something like Matram Foundation. If that answers your question.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's really, again, inspiring, right? People get inspiration from different things, and for you, that one moment was very defining, and it has bloomed into an organization that is helping hundreds of children today. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. Which brings me to my next question, right? So both of you have built organizations, and you must have some founding principles, some core principles on which your organizations are functioning and they are built upon. So what would you say are some core principles of Team Everest and, again, Matram Foundation? And what are the core values that you hold as an organization?
Okay. See, for me, my inspirations are actually my parents, father and my mother. They were no more. So they were very simple people and had a very simple lifestyle. So a lot of values I embedded from them. And apart from that, like if you ask who are role models, like I grown up reading a lot about Gandhi, Mother Teresa, Abdul Kalam. So I got chance to Abdul Kalam 4 times. And, my biggest inspiration is Sachin Tendulkar. So like, so he's a very odd man in that road. But I watched seen him playing cricket, and like mostly I hear to his interviews, his preparation for all the stuff. So typically, if you look at it, like, so typically when you lead an organization, like as a leader, you take those values to the organization. So some of the values we look into is definitely honesty. So I strongly believe, like, there's no shortcuts in life. So if you'd have seen Sachin's farewell speech, that's what you would have told. So I strongly believe there are no shortcuts till date. Like we have never tried any shortcuts. We always, like put our foundation on hard work and honesty. So those are some of the very core values, and again, like very beneficiary focused, and like bringing transparency into play. So ideally, like today, as you know, many non-profits has the challenge of being transparent. So a lot of people don't trust. We have a very negative brand. But that is something we are trying to break. So today, if you look at the 15,000 odd people, why we are able to build it over the time is because of the amount of transparency that we had. A lot of these people volunteer and see our work actually, and that's the reason they actually come back and contribute again. So if you ask me, I think no shortcut, work hard, and like, I mean, always go back, keep asking your why you started your organization. I think that keeps us going all the time.
Thank you for sharing that.
Okay, so here are certain things that I still remember writing this in a piece of paper in the Big FM studio just before we were going live for a radio show with RJ Balaji at that particular point in time. Because we decided, come what may, these are things that we will not compromise. So I will not call it as core values, but core values are there, which I'll call it out as 2-3 points. But some of these principles that with which we will operate. Uh, in our foundation, the first preference is always given to an parentless child. Okay? If there is a child who says that I have lost my parents, irrespective of who you are, we admit them. Okay, so that's number one. Second, girl children always get the top preference at Matram. So out of the 937, a whopping 750 students are girls. So because we believe you educate a girl child, you educate a generation to follow. Right? And that's a classic example is you see back in your own homes, the domestic help who comes in will be making about 4,000, 5,000 rupees, but would even she will just eat one square meal a day, but will ensure that the child gets good education in a matriculation school or whatever. So that way we said that second thing, the girl children will get topmost preference, and of course followed by a single parent, anybody with single parent from a low economic group. Caste, creed, religion, not asked. We don't even ask that in our application form. So irrespective of who you are, we just admit them. Here are 2-3 things that we are, these are non-negotiable for us. Number one, our details of beneficiaries, the pictures, videos, names, actual names are never revealed outside. It is available only to the internal group for a very simple reason that somewhere it struck me that there has to be dignity in giving. And like Karthi mentioned about his friend who cannot buy a piece of notebook, this incident happened in college, where in college, when I was in Loyola, there used to be scholarship given once in 6 months, right? And this scholarship was given based on the community that you belong to, which I didn't understand. So every time my friend used to get a scholarship, as college kids, what will you go and ask? Machan, you have got scholarship, why don't you treat us in the canteen, right? And on one particular day during somewhere the third year, I asked him, every 6 months you are going on stage to collect scholarship, you must be really proud, not knowing what the scholarship was all about. And that point in time, I didn't understand this caste and things like that. He looked at me and he said, do you think so? When I go and take that money, I actually put my head in shame and collect this money. They're not giving me this money because I'm academically brilliant or whatever. This is based on the community that I belong to. So it struck me very, very hard. And that's one simple reason we said, see, remember this, the giver is always happy. When you donate something in memory of your father, mother, or you want to celebrate your child's birthday, when you go to an orphanage, when you give, you are always happy because you feel that you've accomplished something. The taker need not necessarily be in the same mindset. So not all Matram Foundation students are coming from very, very poor background right from the beginning. There are families which have lived life like a king. One day they have come to the streets. The terrible business loss. Somebody has cheated on them and all this stuff. So we always realized from their side it's very difficult. So we said there has to be dignity in giving. So even today, when some of my students are fairly successful working for large corporates and they're doing exceedingly well, we make it a point that we never reveal their actual name, the actual identity. Even though they are ready, we said no. That will be one of our. Number 4, we are not actually into donations as well. So because our model was different, because we source free seats, we realized that money is not the deal breaker for us. Though money is required. Right now, the COVID situation, we have to support families. We are doing other work for which money is required. But otherwise, we said, as an NGO, even today, if you go to Matram's page, you will not find a bank account number. So if you have to donate, you have to take the effort to write to us, and then we will verify and then take it up. So not sounding philosophical, but we wanted to tell the world that to do good work, money is not the sole reason, right? You just network, you bring in connections, you can make miracles happen. Just a simple question. Just imagine 937 students out of which a good number, 800 of them are engineering students. At an average of 10 lakhs, how many crores should I generate? It's practically next to impossible. So these are some of the basic ground principles. And the fifth one, which is we are very, very proud of, we also work with like-minded NGOs. So today, me and Karthi partner. Team Everest and Matram every year partners with a very simple approach. Karthi has a model of paying fees they have a robust process by which he does that. So I tell Karthi, look, if you have a student who can study free of cost, I will take the student. You fund another student who I cannot support. Like, for example, nursing is a course which I may not be able to support. Karthi will be able to pay the fees for that student. Whereas engineering is somebody which I can put the student in a good college. So that way we work with like-minded, several like-minded NGOs. Team Everest was one great partner that we work with. These are some fundamental core values with which we operate upon right now.
Thank you so much, Mr. Field. So it's also really wonderful to see partnerships happening in the NGO space. I think it's the need of the hour. We have a lot of NGOs, but we don't want them to operate in silos. We want them to come together for the same cause. So yeah, thank you. Really good to see that. So that brings me to my next question. How has working with volunteers enabled you to scale and achieve your vision better?
Do you want to go first?
Oh, why not, sir? See, volunteers are a crux. Okay, I think they without them, I think most of the organizations will crumble down. And volunteers come to you only when they trust you, right? So it is it's our core philosophy that volunteers need to have a life-changing experience. So today, Matram has about close to 2,000 plus volunteers, out of which a good 70% of them, we wouldn't even have met them face to face. Our oldest volunteer is about 92-year-old who lives in Tiruvannamalur. Our youngest volunteer is about 4 or 5-year-old who comes and volunteers. Some of our children who come and volunteer during our admission activities. I'll tell you what happens now. If you create an experience by which giving is contagious, when the people see real life transformation happens, right? They cling on to you. So I see 2-3 different types of volunteers. Now, when there is a television show happens and when the talk goes viral, I'm talking in my case where I used to speak in Sun TV for this Kalyanamalai program, and there are some kind-hearted souls who take 2-3 minutes of the bites and then they circulate it on WhatsApp. After seeing the video, a lot of them write to us saying, I mean, very inspiring. I want to make a difference and all that stuff. So we collate the request and we send them. 60 to 70% of the time, volunteers who approach us come with this mindset. Look, I want to make a difference. I can come and contribute whenever I am free, right? So that doesn't work. Volunteering is about giving consistent amount of time, because based on you, there's a lot of activities which are lined up. While the remaining 30-40% are very clear, they are very focused, saying, look, I want to make a difference. This is my core strength, and this is what I can offer. So as founders of organizations, as people who are running these large organizations, what we look for is, what is the core strength of this individual? How can that be leveraged? How can they be consistent in what they deliver? And we put them on with our people. And why do they come back in return? Because there's no monetary gains. They are all people who work for corporates and stuff like that. The only thing which makes them come back over and over again, because of the transformation that they make in others. When they see the children from first year to fourth year, and by the fourth year, when they see that young, confident boys and girls getting campus placed and doing their bit, I think volunteers are completely kicked about it. And today we have a good amount of volunteers who have joined Matram as volunteer, but now have become core team members. So that way, if you show growth path for volunteers as well, I think that's fantastic. For us, in simple, in one line, if I have to say, without volunteers, I don't think our organization exists. So we have to thank these 2,000 gods and angels who are in different parts of the country today, who all come into action when when the action is required.
Nice. Okay, so at Team Everest, if you look at it, we have around 15,000 volunteers right now. So I know, like as usual, in 2006 when we started with just one volunteer, and it kept on growing. So like almost till 2014, if you actually look at it, and we started in 2006. We didn't register our organization as a non-profit for 3 years. So 2006 to 2009, we didn't even have a bank account. What we were doing is mostly we were doing only volunteering activities. Almost till 2014. 90% of our initiative didn't require any money at all. So we had only volunteers coming and giving out their time. So, and once I quit my Cognizant, because I started some scholarship programs, we actually started raising funds. If not, like even today, if you look at it, a lot of our work is purely volunteering and not based on funds.
Right.
And we make sure, like, and I always used to say when I used to in Cognizant, I worked exactly there for 100 months. 15 months I was a Java developer, and looking at what I'm doing when Cognizant started their CSR, they told, why don't you come and do this? I was also waiting for such an opportunity. So, and I went there. So, rest 85 months, I worked for Cognizant CSR. So, and when I quit the organization, we made around 40,000 employees to volunteer. That was a big eye opener for me. Like at the time, we had around close to a lakh people in India. Just by giving a platform, you are making 40,000 people to go and give back to the society. I think that's the beauty of volunteering. I strongly believe people are ready to give. It's just that you need to give them the right opportunity at the right time and facilitate it, make it easy for people. So today we are a very young country with respect to volunteering. Actually, so if you look at the West, it's a very matured industry. Like US tells 1 in 10. Employees actually work in non-profits, which means 10% of the US population is working on the non-profit sector. Whereas in India, you don't even have those kinds of statistics. So I would say, like we are actually growing next 10 years. I could see there's a huge amount of volunteering that's going to happen in our country. So what we at Team Everest are trying to do was facilitate it. And I strongly believe one size doesn't fit all. So we design various different programs, identify, because as we work in education sector, there are a lot of gaps at different spaces. So different people come with different skill sets. So we just try to fix those gaps with the help of volunteers. We even have programs for children. Right from fifth standard, we design programs where children can come and actually volunteer. So like children are the, I mean, sorry, the volunteers are the foundation of Team Everest. Like Sujit was mentioning, like we don't exist without them. I always tell them, like end of the day, we exist because we are trying to solve a problem for the beneficiary, and we can't do that at scale without support from volunteers. So they play a very crucial role at each and every stage. Even today, if you look at it, there are more than 200, 300 people volunteering for one of our initiatives virtually. So in the past 2 months after COVID has locked down, so like if you go to teameverest.ngo website, they have put something called as volunteer from home. And that day, right? So I was just wondering, two things struck me when the lockdown happened. I was wondering, okay, now children are going to lose on their education. What can I do for them? So that was running inside my mind. I thought, okay, why don't we do webinars? Because at least 60-70% of them have smartphones. On the other hand, who's going to do that webinar? I thought, okay, why not we bring in volunteer? So right from April 1, every day, 2 webinars has been happening for all our scholars. Apart from that, many other initiatives in villages where there are no smartphones, webinar can't be joined. We run an initiative called Tell a Story, where volunteers call a child, tell story every day, keep them engaged. So the past 2 months, if you actually look at it, we have engaged around 2,000 volunteers in various initiatives just 2 months after the lockdown has happened. So this lockdown has happened, like I actually wrote this on my website, in Team Everest website. So I put, in Tirukural is a very beautiful quote called as, like Anbirkum Undo Adaikum Tal. Like, so there is no, which means there is no lock for love. I think, like you can't lock volunteers' love. So that's what I strongly believe. Even lockdown happens, we can tap their love for others and able to connect the beneficiary, and that has been proved by engaging 2,000 people in just, I mean, like 2 months period. We have never done so much of virtual volunteering, and this is the first time we have ever done that. So volunteers are the key and pillars and foundation of Team Everest.
Thank you so much for sharing. I think from both of what you shared, right, what stands out to me is that you fundamentally have belief in people, that people want to give back. People have the motivation to do that. We just have to provide them the right platform. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that.
And just a point. Statistically, also, it says that this generation believes in giving back. Okay, if you there are about 4 generations which is living right now, right? So any situation, be it the floods or whatever, this generation, the current younger generation, is seen as a lot more responsible than the generation that we belong to, at least to the age group that I belong to, 40 plus, and my father's generation, right? Because these are people who believe that they need to settle down and then do charity work. You find a lot of youngsters in 2021s who are willing to get their hands dirty. They could work for corporate houses, but I think without them, a good number of organizations will come crumbling down.
True, I totally agree with Sujit. Like we now start getting a lot of volunteering requests from college students, which was not there. In fact, when we started 2008, 2010, I used to get a lot of less requests. But nowadays, I think like that awareness about volunteering is increasing. A lot of people are in fact reaching out. Maybe like the growth in digital is also something that is really helping us. I could see a lot of youngsters coming and asking us for volunteering opportunity nowadays.
True, very true. A lot of people are stepping into the social sector in the 20s through fellowships, through taking up humanities courses to do doing social work. So there is a lot of influx, and yeah, I think this is also the time for social organizations to tap that potential. So which brings me to my next question, right? So having worked for so many years, both Matram and Team Everest have a lot of interesting initiatives. If you could talk about one such initiative.
Maybe okay. So Sujit does scholarship anyway. So let him speak about scholarship. So I will probably speak about another initiative that we do. So it's an initiative called Speak Out. So which I was in fact speaking during the Volcon, which Bhumi organized as well. So if you look at it, right, see a lot of these children whom we support are parentless, single parented, coming from a very financially challenged background, and like communication skill is something that they always lack. So 2016 is when we started our scholarship program, and like the very first year and the second year we used to have classes on every Sunday. Like in a semester we have 10 Sundays classes, so 20 Sundays a year we do. So we used to invite volunteers, take them grammar classes, and various spoken English classes we were doing. And post those classes, we were doing assessments, and we found out, there's not much of an improvement over there. And that's when I was really realizing, like skills are something that needs to be practiced, not just sit and listen. Say today I need to practice swimming. I can't just sit, see someone teaching about swimming, and I am not getting into the pool. I'm definitely not going to learn swimming, no matter how many lectures, how many YouTube videos I watch, right? So that is something I found out our students were not doing. Though we tell them, like go speak in English with your friends and all, people are not doing it. That's when we came out with an idea of Speak Out, where like, we will connect a child with a volunteer, and we built a small mobile application and curriculum. So where like the volunteer will teach the child for, typically they will speak in English for 30 minutes a day. That's the basic idea. And like just after the 40 sessions, actually, when we did the assessment, that is like 80% improvement in most of them. So we had like 6 levels. So most of them were arts college students for us, and we had 6 semesters. For every semester, we built a small speak out curriculum, and every time I see minimum 30 to 40% improvement with respect to what's happening. So like I strongly believe practice is the key. Like with practice, you could always improve. Uh, like again, the idea basically came for me by watching Sachin Tendulkar. So Sachin Tendulkar, like after 198 matches, 6 matches, the final 2 test matches with West Indies, and instead of taking rest, he was going to some, like small town called Alli, something like that, and he was practicing there. The journalist went and asked him, like, hey, why are you practicing now? You are just going to rest after 2 more test matches. Why do you practice? And Sachin just replied, like, because there are still flaws in my techniques. So I'm just trying to improvise it as if he's going to play for another 24 years. I think practice is the key. So I always used to tell these stories to my children, and I tell them to practice it. So Speak Out definitely made a very huge difference. And a lot of children, because of that, have placed in good companies and got good marks. So and typically, like when we did our last Speak Out, which I think ended on Feb 20th, 2020, we had when we are currently supporting 400 scholars. So we had for each student we connected 2 volunteers. So 800 volunteers volunteered from some 12 countries and 4 different continents. So like this, and all the beneficiaries are in Chennai. So this again, like proves that volunteering doesn't need any, has no boundaries. And luckily in 21st century, like it's possible to bring in technology, and especially like when Geo went free, a lot of all they were ready to do long time calling and all. So that's when we actually introduced this tele volunteering program, and like this is one of the biggest crowd pulling volunteering activity for Team Everest.
Thank you for sharing that.
Okay, Great. So I'll just give a quick 3 pointers. One, for our existing students who are with us already, apart from their core studies and all this stuff, we offer them placement training. So that comes as part and parcel. But it doesn't stop there. So we ask them also to do community work with NGOs of their choice. So they can either volunteer for Matram, or they can pick up an NGO of their choice. So today I have my students who work for an NGO called That's My Child, which works on the school education space. So they go and volunteer for them. Some of my volunteers work with EFI, Arun Krishnamurthy, in the Environmental Foundation of India. Because what we tell them is each one of them have to pick. See, volunteering, what is very critical is you pick a cause that is very close to your heart. It could be something to do with environment, something to do with child welfare, something to do with activism at times. So if you connect that dot, then your contribution will be much higher. So today I have happy to say that some of my Matram students are actually volunteering with about 7-8 different organizations. Wherever there's opportunities, they go and exercise. So that's something which we encourage. And this has a huge rewards during our annual conference, which we do in January, when the best outgoing student award is being presented, or the Stars of Matram awards, I suppose some 60-70 of them get. This is one of the core factor that we see. What has this student done beyond getting educated at Matram, right? Has he contributed something back to the society? And there we don't know questions asked. As long as this person is part and parcel of a scheme of things with another NGO, we are happy about it. So that's one. Two unique projects that we do: we build libraries for government schools. So that's one of our pet projects. So we identify a select government school and we help build library. And the way we go about doing it is we partner with another school. There are two schools, one which is economically of higher standard, right? A private school, and we complement it by matching them with another government school. So it is actually children of this school who set up this library. And there's a very quick small story that we did. And I'll tell you why, because one project connects to another. We do a project called Santa Kids. So this is about inculcating the joy of giving among young children. So we believe that if you inculcate the habit of giving at fairly young age, then they become a lot more responsible. And what we started was like, people have to write a small letter to Santa Claus around Christmas time, saying what is the gift you wanted. So one of my friends said, "Boss, you are actually inviting trouble. What if the kids are going to write something expensive?" And I will still not forget the first letter read like this: "Dear Christmas Tata, Daivu Senji, please buy me a size for Hawaii slipper. ஸ்கூலுக்கு போகும்போது கால் ரொம்ப சுடுது, கொப்பளமா வருது." And that's the gift she wanted. She just wanted a rubber slipper as gift. And we said, look, how much money is going to cost us to buy something like this? But then the second idea thought, which struck us is, instead of we buying it, why don't you take it to another school and ask a third standard student from that school to buy something like this? So we tried it in Shishya OMR. The principal was extremely kicked about it. So we collected about 700 chits from a government corporation school, and we gave the 700 chits to the Shishya children. And he said, you buy a gift, wrap it, and bring it back. And it was like an exchange program. So to the government school kids, we said, you're not just going to accept gifts like that, you're going to give them a return gift. So our volunteers taught them to make paper jewelry and stuff like that, which was given as a return gift. So that experience was mind-boggling. Children just loved it, right? More than the receiver, the giver was very happy. And that's a time when one fifth standard boy ran to a room next to the headmistress room. And he asked the headmistress, why is this room locked? And she said, look, right now it's used as a storeroom, but I wanted to set up a library there, right? So this young kid was my son's classmate at fifth standard. This happened some 5 years back. He came running to me and he said, uncle, why can't we set up a library for them? And when the kid asked that question, something struck me. Okay, that sounds very interesting. So we will talk about it. And we started collecting data on how much will it cost to set up a primary school library. And the cost was around 2.5 lakhs if you get even the encyclopedias and stuff like that. So without thinking too much, I went and challenged these fifth standard kids, saying, okay, let's see how much funds you are able to raise. Okay, whatever funds you are raising, we will match it, right? Thinking that how much will they raise? And we anyway committed that we will fund the remaining portion. And that is where I realized that you never underestimate a fifth standard kids' potential. So the school science exhibition was happening. These kids, fifth standard kids, walked up to the school principal and they said, look, 27 schools are coming to our school exhibition. And our canteen just serves 2-3 items. Okay. And that will be bad. If you allow, we are not going to put up a science exhibition. Can we run the canteen for 2 days? And the principal said, okay. So the canteen was run by the 5th standard students of Shishya OMR. And the beauty is they didn't do anything. Their parents have to do everything, but they just sold things. And you won't believe, in 2 days, their sale was 1.3 lakhs. And I committed that I will double it up. Okay. So the first library was set up by Shishya OMR students of class 5 students for the government corporation school in Torepakam. So far, we have set up about 3 to 4 libraries right now. So that's another pet project. So two projects which is very, very close to heart apart from our educational assistance program is Santa Kids, which is most like a matching grant program, Joy of Giving, and the library project that we do year on year.
Thank you so much. Beautiful to see actually. Children have a lot of potential, and I think again, like both of you shared, giving them the right platform is going to bring it out. So going back to volunteers, right? So what do you envision for your volunteers, and from the experience that they gain with your organization, what role do you see them playing in the society and for themselves?
No, number one, I think, as I told you, volunteering is addictive. So when you see a personal transformation, it changes their perspective towards life. Right, number one, I think it's more of self transformation more than they're doing community work. Most of the time, 99.9% of the time, volunteers realize that there is a personal transformation which goes through. I don't know why I named my organization as Matram. A lot of people even today ask me, is it because you bring Matram to others' life? I said, no, it's exactly the opposite. Okay. I am a better person right now than what I was in 2013. So it starts with that moment of enlightenment when you start to volunteer. So number one is it goes through a personal transformation. Second, when you start working, you improvise your ideas. So there are two ways you can do it. Either you partner with the same organization where you can scale up their programs. Some of our projects, some of the work that we do are brilliant ideas that has come from our volunteers. So you leverage their resources. See, it's like this. If there are two individuals coming with the same strength, then there is job only for one person. So similarly, with a strength that I don't have, if a volunteer has, I need to get him on board so that I leverage the best out of him in the interest of the organization. What this could be the third scenario? A volunteer comes and volunteers with you, learns things how the society operates in their space, and then they want to go and start something on their own. I think that's phenomenal. Today, there is this word, unfortunate, that when people compare one NGO to another, as if there are two corporate houses working. No, for the kind of demand, the kind of need India has, even if you have 10,000, 20,000 more NGOs, you can still operate. The needy is there. What we operate is not even 0.1% of we are serving the society. So that way, if we can train more volunteers, and if they can go and start something either similar or something which is radically very different in their own space of life, I think that will be beautiful. Point number 3. Point 4, I think we wanted to convey at Matram, we strongly believe we wanted to convey this message that look, to start something, you don't need to disown something else. Now, the future after COVID will be more about a gig worker concept, right? So I don't think somebody's going to work in Infosys for eternity or in Cognizant or in Amazon or whatever. So they will say, I'll work for 2-3 days in Amazon, and the remaining 3-4 days, I will want to do something very, very different. It's already happening right now. So I think the beauty is if people can think about starting something on their own, operating in their own space, and if we can give that learning opportunity, I think that will be phenomenal. And that is what we work with our volunteers. When volunteers come with some great ideas, we see whether it is the right time for us to implement. Otherwise, we say it's a great idea, nurture it, and see how you can implement it. And we will provide all the kind of support. So those are 4 points that I have.
Thank you, sir.
See, at Teamers, we strongly believe, volunteers are the true beneficiaries actually. Because if you actually look at it, like more than the beneficiaries, the volunteer who actually have a lot of takeaway when they actually volunteer. So one thing I personally see is that like when you actually volunteer, a lot of your skill sets go up. So if you look at myself, like I have never spoken on stage till my maybe school college days also. But post I started Team Everest, like I have done a lot of public speaking. All this because like the job demanded it. So I've seen a lot of people's skills going up, and I feel the volunteers role typically would be like see for us is to make volunteering as a habit. Like today we don't like we do few things very casually. Like I always used to tell like in India you take your child to a temple or to a cinema, to a shopping or to a beach, but the family don't take the child and say go on volunteering, which start happening very recently, but that too at a very children from very good posh background. So our goal basically is to make volunteering as an habit. So that is something we are looking into, so that when volunteering becomes a habit, imagine a country where 1 billion people volunteers. I think we can solve a lot of local problems. So, I mean, it's very simple, right? Okay, your street lamp is not working. You need not wait for someone else to come and fix it. When if that street is going to have a volunteer by themselves, he or she itself is going to fix it, not waiting for someone else. So that's what we strongly believe in. So our idea is to empower people to give back to society, make volunteering as simple as possible, so that and create a culture of volunteering in the country. So today people put volunteering, like, okay, when I find time, I will do it. Like Vijit was mentioning, right? So people feel okay, and it's in their list probably at number 15 or number 16, and like your work, you don't even cross number 10 on your day, because and the day is over already. So the day of hitting your number 16th on your task list never comes up at all. Now, how do you make it a top 3, top 5 priority, so that more and more people could volunteer and give back? So I think I see them as a regular contributor to the society. You play a son of a, I mean, role of a son or a daughter or an uncle, brother, sister, right? So I think people should also play the role of a volunteer that way. I mean, I don't think. I mean, imagine a life going back to cave when you are a caveman, where you are not protected with walls. You are in mid of a forest. How people would have slept? So someone would have told, okay, now you take the role of watching. You play the role of the security, so that I will sleep. And once I wake up, I will become the security. You go and sleep. So I think volunteering has started right way back when we were cavemen, and I think it's our duty to preserve that, and make more people to volunteer and keep giving.
Thank you so much, Karan. So my next question is, how do you engage alumni, people who come into your organization and then who graduate or who transition out? How do you engage your alumni?
Okay, so Sujit?
Okay. So very interesting question, and for us, this happened just a few months back. So people always ask us, so what do the alumni do to you? I mean, do they pay back? Do they offer money and things like that? So one thing we are very clear: we, as in principle, we don't take, or when even some of the goodwill gestures from our students, when they want to contribute their first month salary and all this stuff, we say no. We say no. Even if they want to donate, that token amount is something like 100 rupees you take, so that they feel that they have given something back to Matram. We believe that the alumni role is to be a good role model citizen outside. So that's the first and foremost. So we said this is not a body shopping NGO where we picked up from school, we educated you, and we got a job in a corporate. No, that's not the idea. We wanted a true transformation in their lives, so that is what we expect every alumni student of Matram to be. So this year, the students came up just before our annual conference, Sangamam, and they said, "Sir, why don't we formally structure this?" And they have started Matram Alumni Association, so which means they have their own president, secretary, treasurer, and stuff like that. And they said, "We will not take a single penny from Matram. We are going to raise funds. So you said you're not going to accept funds from us, but we are going to put this from our own side, from our salary, and have this organization." So they have a very robust structure, and I was very extremely pleased when they invited me for first meeting and stuff like that. So today the role of Matram alumni students is very simple. Their way of giving back is, they are in different cities, but they are the biggest mentors to my students. Now today I head HR for Infosys in Chennai, so I can talk about placements for hours together. But when I go and talk to my students, they still see me as a founder or as an HR person at Infosys. The connect will always be like, okay, he's there, he can talk about it and all this stuff. But today, when my alumni student comes and talks, connects to that level, you know what, I went through the struggle. These are ways and means how I cracked this code. These are ways and means how I worked on my communication skills and stuff like that. I think that's phenomenal. So today, a good number of my alumni students do that mentoring role. Second, at least about 7 of my alumni students are today college anchors. Now that's a huge role. These are roles which are given to seasoned volunteers who are working for corporates with like 10-15 years experience. Like today I have a girl who passed out last year, But she is the anchor for Satyabama for one particular batch, which means she is personally responsible for 50 students, tracking their academics, looking at their concerns, coaching them, and being the first level of mentorship that's being provided. So our alumni that way take a huge role. And for those who are outside the state, some of them working in Bangalore and things like that, they connect virtually and guide these students. But we have said, don't, because you are in Bangalore or because you're in Hyderabad or in Delhi, don't drop the ball and say that I will not volunteer. And that's where we have inculcated that during their college days. You have to be part of some other NGO and make sure that the cycle continues. During our admission time, I standardly make this statement that we don't expect anything in return from you. We don't need a single penny from you. But remember that somebody is educated you when you were going through a tough time. Somebody has sponsored your education. Some college chairman has given you free education. The only way you can give it back is when you touch the life of somebody, when you start earning. And I'm extremely happy that a good majority of our alumni students are able to do that. And that makes me super proud.
Nice. So I think I just need to repeat what Sujit was mentioning. So in fact, we named our scholarship program as I Am the Change scholarship program because, like, see, Gandhi told, be the change. And I strongly believe I am the change. I mean, everyone tells I am the change, right? So you're not, you tell be the change, you are telling the other person. And I say I am the change, you are actually telling to yourself. That's what I strongly believe. Every beneficiary is actually a change agent. So when we actually select the students, there is a small letter that they actually write, where they give a commitment that when they grow up, they settle in life, they will educate another children. So that's why we told it, when it becomes a chain reaction, right? You can educate more and more people, because imagine how many number of graduates we have in India right now. If everyone had educated at least even one children, today the entire country would have been educated. You don't need organization like Team Everest or Matram. But so somewhere I think someone should start that. So I thought, okay, why don't we start that change? Today we have 400. I think, like our first batch passed out in 2016. I mean, 2016 batch passed out last year. We had just 19 people as part of it. So most of them actually, like half of them get into good jobs. Others have gotten into moderate jobs right now. So some of them started contributing. I know a child, single child who got affected by Chennai flood. So 2016 when he selected, we also gave support to children who are affected by in floods. So one of the girl actually, she came, and when Corona was happening, though her job her salary has gone down by 50%, she came and contributed 2,000 rupees, telling that I want to help families. I think that's something we regularly tell them, because through the scholarship program, our children actually volunteers for various initiatives. We continuously encourage them to volunteer and support, and we constantly remind them during every interactions, right? This is I am the change scholarship program, you are the change agents, you need to bring that change happening. So students, we take every opportunity to remind them, and that has been with them right now. So just one batch is out, and I could see more than 50-60% are started to volunteer and give back. So people are giving in terms of both time and money right now. So once more batches comes out, we will know, like whether we have done the right thing or probably need to do something better to put back. But my expectation is basically, like these people should go back and educate them. I think, like probably if people, like maybe Sujit, me, like we typically, face experiences, like I met a student, my friend was struggling, and for Sujit, he met someone in his public speaking. I think when we get inspired with so many people, I think beneficiaries having gotten the scholarship, I think, like they can play a huge role, because we are people who actually see the pain, but those are children who actually underwent the pain. I think, like if these people we can nurture them properly, I think they can become a huge change agents in our nation.
So one thing we should not do is to force alumni to give back. Okay, I think that's a mistake. That's a grave mistake. At least I know of a couple of organizations which are committing, saying because you studied with us, you should do with this, etc. Now that is just not right in my view. Okay, your job is to only to educate or give them the opportunity and leave it open. And if the kids trust you, they will come back and do their might.
Exactly. So that's exactly what we do. So we typically tell them, like you do, because we don't have a tracking mechanism once they pass out. you can't go. We don't even know where they stand. So I only tell them, okay, till you get a scholarship, we at least track your attendance, your training program, whether you're attending or not. But once you are out, no way I'm going to track. Typically, the trust. I believe I will be more happy if you are going to support someone. I always tell people, like I meet you after 10 years or 15 years. I'm not going to ask you how much you earn. Instead, I will only ask you how much you
How
are
much?
giving. So that's something I always tell them. So it's absolutely voluntary, and I hope our children will do it definitely.
Yeah, I'm
This
sure. I
time
think,
the
yeah.
this time the silver lining for us in the annual conference, our first gold medal came from a Team Everest scholar. So
Yes,
somebody who
now
studied in Team Everest for UG came to Matram for PG, and she won the first gold medal for us, a university rank, winning a cash prize of 25. So that again shows what's the power of partnerships.
Yeah, yeah,
absolutely,
yeah.
yeah. So she actually, I met her in a school during her 10th standard or ninth standard, I think. So we educated. In fact, I'm just not revealing names because Matram has that stuff. So we educated her sister, and her mother actually, like she's a single parented child, and the mother actually worked as an housekeeping in Team Everest office for 2 years also. So I was very, very super happy because Team Everest actually sponsors only for UG degree. We don't sponsor for PG degrees. So that's when I met Sujit. So Sujit told, like he can help with PG degree seats. And she went there and she became a gold medalist. I thought this is super wow.
Yeah. Very inspiring, actually. Like the spirit of your organization is also translating to your alumni, like Mr. Sujit said, like you shared, right? Alumni are still giving back, and I think that's the power of the values that you've built in your students as well. So speaking of giving back, you must be aware that Bhumi has launched a fellowship in education to work with low-income government-aided schools and private schools. So what role do you see a fellowship such as this, a full-time fellowship where fellows go and work in schools full-time for 2 years to gain experience? What role do you see this playing in their long term and in the social sector?
Has a huge role. So something very similar to what Bhumi launches. I've been part of TFI. Some of the fellows who used to work with TFI used to partner with Matram. So the library project first library project itself was executed by a TFI a fellow by name Yash. So he wanted to make a difference to the school. And then he went and started teaching in very many places. I have know of good number of people who work from corporate, take a sabbatical, go through this, and this is like a calling for them. They realize, look, I can touch the lives of 60 children year on year, and many of them from there on have either started their NGOs in some remote corners or getting into the teaching space. And see, today unfortunately you don't get good quality students taking up teaching as a career. That can be a big profession, right? So if not for that, right, it is right from breaking a monotony from your regular work, from the corporate role, or fresh from college before you take a corporate assignment, you go and do a fellowship like this with organizations like Bhumi, which is very structured. I went through your program; it's very structured. I think this will open up the horizons for you. It will make you a more empathetic individual. It will help you understand what is lacking on the ground. So today, most of us are armchair critics. We can criticize the government, we can criticize the education system, sitting in and writing on the Facebook and on all the stuff. Very few people are action takers. Very few people, and each one of us do it in a different format. Like for example, in Matram, we say that you can do it over weekends. In weekends, 2 full days, our students run this program. Now, Bhumi's is far more structured. You're talking about 5 days in full classroom sessions where the scholars, and they're going to get a decent sum of money as their stipend, etc. I think it's a great opportunity. It's a great opportunity for anybody who wants to see what the external world looks like. And after that, it's up to the individual whether they want to pick up something on the same line of thought, or go back to the corporate world and be a good volunteer and then give your mind. It's like devoting 2 years of your time for a cause of your choice. And if each individual, see, it's like this, right? There are countries which says after your graduation you have to work for the army. Singapore University says that, yeah, you can graduate from here, but you have to work in this country for a particular stipulated period of time. I think it will be great if we have something like that, a very, very small rule saying that you have to volunteer, you have to go back and give. And that is where, as a nation, we will improve. So that way, my hats off to Bhumi. It's a wonderful program. I hope people are watching this, and people who go to watch this later, through site or whatever, and grab this opportunity and try and make a difference.
Nice.
Thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, so I truly believe this is a very very wonderful, nice initiative. So absolutely, like schools and children are going to be the huge beneficiary of this fellowship. So because I myself has personally experienced it. So Team Everest has a fellowship program called I Am the Change Fellowship, so which we started in 2016. So we have fellows. The difference is we don't put them in government schools, but instead they become social workers and work with us for 2 years. So I have personally seen, first of all, transformation within them. So I mean, like a lot of people, I mean, believe, like if I want to come to social sector, I will not get salary. So how do I manage my family? So definitely fellowships are a great platform for people who want to kickstart their career in the social sector. So giving them a very decent stipend and, helping them manage the family, because I mean, only if they don't have worry about managing their family, they can probably start worrying about the country. Like if not, it becomes very very hard if you can't take care of your own family. So fellowships are great place, because I see I would have at least heard some 1,500 people telling that, like, hey, how did you, Kati, you have quit your job and doing this full time, like we are kind of scared of doing it. So that actually, like that question actually triggered me to start a fellowship program, so that, like people who has dreams to give back to the society, I think it's our responsibility to give them wings, support them, so that they can go back and give back to this nation, give back to the children. So that way this fellowship is truly great, because like from the fellow side, this is going to empower more people, because you never knew that the relationship never ends with 2 years, post which, like these people get wings and they actually go create impact throughout the country. So that's not going to stop at all. So that way this is great. And from the school perspective, if you actually look at it, this is a, I mean, this is the most needed stuff today in India. So because we work in 9 villages in Tirunelveli district, so one of the key challenge we find is, because that place is 150 kilometers from Chennai. So you speak some decent English, some good skills, they immediately migrate to a city like Chennai, and because you get better salary over here. So getting some very good knowledgeable person, skillful person inside a remote village is really really difficult. So like if these fellows get opportunity to go to these kinds of places, government schools, corporation schools, and village schools, like rural schools, I think it's going to make a huge difference on ground. So all the best to Bhumi to do that.
Thank you so much. And like you said, it's true, for anybody to kickstart their career in social sector, fellowships play a crucial role. In Bhumi, I'm a former TFA fellow. We have 2 Gandhi fellows. We have an India fellow in Bhumi. So we have at least 4 people who've done fellowships. So I think it's really, personally think it's really crucial. And Bhumi Fellowship is going to give platform to people to be in schools, to understand the ground reality, and to learn more about the social sector itself. So on that note, we've come to the end of the webinar. Thank you so much for joining us. It was really inspiring listening to you, to your stories, and thank you for connecting with us.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Pleasure. Like it's nice to, I mean, be a fellow panelist with Sujit. I think this is the first time we are on the same platform. So happy listening to Sujit, and happy sharing my experience with all the volunteers over there.
Same here, Karthik. Wishing you good luck. Yeah.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Good luck.
Thanks a lot.